for new participating areas, for new oil in the pipeline. But what we fundamentally disagree with is giving away billions of dollars with no strings attached.
Senator, it wasn't that long ago, though, the Democrats felt that ACEs shouldn't be touched at all. What's changed now that Democrats have proposed their own tax incentive plan?
You know, I think in the last couple of years we've heard from the experts, and I've become persuaded that for new companies, new fields, new participating areas, we can do a little bit better than we're doing. And so that's really where we're focusing our energy. One of the big differences is the governor's bill really focuses on the legacy fields. If you look at the rates of return in the legacy fields by the governor's own experts just a week or two ago, at current prices, the rates of return are roughly 70%, extremely high rates of return. If you look at recent profits by the oil industry, ConocoPhillips, BP, both made over $2 billion in profits last year. Alaska is one of the most profitable places in the world, according to the SEC filings of some of the oil companies. So we don't need to change our structure for the legacy fields, for the existing fields, but for new fields, we can do better. We all agree on that.
What guarantees do either of these plans, and Commissioner, I'll ask the question first of you, what guarantees do you have with either one of these plans that there will be more production? That seems to be one of the catches with all of this.
You know, that's a very good question, and if I could just correct something the Senator said. He pointed out that our plan eliminating progressivity reduces $1.6 billion coming in. He didn't mention that our changes to tax credits mean we're paying $1 billion. There's $1 billion we're not paying out anymore. So it's much more of a balanced plan than what was pointed out. But that's a situation when you discuss guarantees that as you look at the other jurisdictions out there, whether it be Alberta, the UK, different areas, when they change their taxes, they get input from companies, much as we need to hear what this will mean to the future, what this will mean for investment in the state of Alaska. But ultimately, to expect companies that have a board of directors and all of the other events, the Deepwater Horizons of the world going on, to come out and say, if you do X, we're going to do Y, I think is expecting a little bit more. To ask for that hard of a guarantee is almost setting it up for not having any change, because I don't think you're ever going to see that, and I don't think we've ever seen a state in our country ever get anything like that.
Senator, I know that's something that Democrats have always pushed for in this debate, is you've wanted to see guarantees from oil industry members that they were going to increase production on the North Slope. How do you get those guarantees, sir? Right.
Well, and again, the difference between their bill and our bill is their bill does cut progressivity by roughly $2 billion a year at $120 a barrel of oil. That's what their bill does. That's in their fiscal note. Now, how do we get guarantees? Well, their bill just gives the money away. Our bill says you produce oil in new fields, you produce oil in new areas, you beat the current production rate that you have right now, you get tax breaks. So you don't get tax breaks under our bill unless you actually are producing new oil. Another component of our bill is we're saying before a company can bid on a lease, they have to come to the state of Alaska and show that they have plans to develop that lease, because what you have is companies sitting on leases. We also want to see enforcement of the leases we have. We had Point Thompson, which the oil industry sat on for 30 years, went through 27 plans of development, and finally, when we took away their leases, they said, okay, we're ready to develop now. So the state needs to act like a sovereign. We need to be enforcing our rights to our oil.
This is such a complex issue, and I like to consider myself as somebody who maybe is somewhat informed anyways, but how does someone like myself, how do the average, quote-unquote, average Alaskans get their hands around this particular issue? Everything seems to be 180 degrees from one point to the other, depending on which side you're listening to. How does an average Alaskan understand this issue, Senator?
Just listen to me. No, seriously. It is an extremely complex issue. It's something that we've been working on here ever since I got elected 6 years ago. And so I've been doing presentations on this. I've got some things which I'll be putting up on a website which people can go and look at my perspective on the issue. You know, for 30 years in the state of Alaska, we had a tax structure, a very low tax structure. In fact, 15 out of 19 fields in 2006 were paying 0% taxes, production taxes. And yet production declined from 2 million barrels a day down to 750,000 barrels a day during that time frame. Investment declined, jobs declined. Right now, under ACEs, we're at all-time highs in jobs. We've never had more people working on the North Slope than we do right now. We've got all-time highs in investment. We've never had more investment, capital investment, which is investment to put oil in the pipeline, than we do today. We've never had more companies filing tax returns. on the North Slope than we do today. In fact, a 383% increase in companies filing tax returns since we passed ACEs. Companies have earned $36 billion in profits at rates of return, in some cases, over 100%. It's an extremely profitable place to do business. And so giving away tax breaks with no strings attached, we think that's something Alaskans understand. I know when I've talked to Alaskans, they get that. They don't want to see us giving away billions with no strings attached.
And Senator, I think if we talk to Commissioner Butcher, you're going to say things aren't quite as rosy up there on the.
Yeah, I mean the senator's pointing out we've been at a certain level for spending. What's not commented is for the last 5 years we've been at a plateau, where every other oil-producing region is at a very steep incline. When you look at the jobs, we're at a high over the last 10 or 15 years, but we're at a 5-year plateau, where every other oil state has a steep incline. And to answer the question about how people kind of sort through all of this stuff, I will point to the legislative website, and Senate Bill 21 is our bill. Their bill will have analysis run on this soon, but you can dig into the presentations, not just from the Department of Revenue, from the administration's consultants, from the legislature's consultants. They lay out how competitive we are, where we fit in, what the cash flows are, what the rates of return, the net present value. I mean, almost a mind-numbing amount of detail, but it really does give a person an idea of where we stand in Alaska and what tweaks, what effect it'll have.
Very quickly, we only have a few seconds left. Two different bills, one from the Democrats, one from the administration. Is there room for compromise in these two pieces of legislation, these two proposals?
Senator Wielechowski pointed out a few things. They want to extend the small producer tax credit. That's in our bill. They've looked at something called a gross revenue exclusion, where challenged fields, new fields, viscous oil is a potential, you give a discount to the taxes. We have that in our bill too. They're not the same. So there are pieces I think we can work together and work on, but ultimately there's kind of a different viewpoint that ultimately would stop us from completely coming together.
Senator Wielechowski, get the last word on this. Is there room for compromise?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we all want more oil in the pipeline. We have different philosophies on how to do it. I think if you look historically, their philosophy has been a failed philosophy. It's cost us tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. And so, like Commissioner said, we agree. We want to increase the net present values, the internal rates of return in the new areas. If you increase your oil production over current levels, the fundamental disagreement we have is progressivity. We don't think we should be giving away billions of dollars with no strings attached, particularly for the legacy fields, particularly for the fields that we all agree have rates of return of 60, 70, 80%, and have net present values, profit margins that are much higher than just about anywhere else in the world, according to their own experts. We just think that's a bad deal for Alaskans. There's not a business in the world that would agree to that deal.
Okay, Senator, we'll leave it there. Bill Wielechowski, a Democrat from Anchorage, thanks so much for joining us from the state capitol tonight. And Commissioner Brian Butcher of the Department of Revenue, thank you so much for being here in Anchorage with us.
My pleasure, Steve.
Thanks a lot. Well, up next on One Alaska, harnessing the elements like giant trees, we see more and more wind turbines sprouting up around Alaska as communities look to alternative ways of providing energy. Also, the power of the incoming tide. For generations, people have looked below ground for sources of energy, mining coal, oil, and natural gas. But these days, there's an emphasis on the elements, wind and water. Channel 2 reporter Blake Essig tells us about a company hoping to harness the tides.
Around the world, we're faced with a serious problem.
There's 1.6 billion people on the planet right now with no electricity, and they all wanted it yesterday.
In the last frontier, high costs and depleting resources are a reality.
Mother Nature's not making fossil fuels like she used to.
Just in the past decade, the price of diesel has nearly tripled.
I don't think we're going to see diesel going away. I do think we're going to see diesel getting more and more expensive.
As for natural gas,
we're talking about a natural gas shortage potentially next winter on the rail belt, where we'll be importing natural gas. So we are already seeing the beginning of the decline of our meeting our needs strictly through fossil fuels.
Whether it happens in 5, 10, or 50 years, eventually these finite resources will run out. A state in desperate need of innovation, potentially finding a lifeline in an element that Alaskans already depend on. Alaska is home to the second highest tidal range in North America. And according to the National Renewable Energy Lab, 90% of all the country's tidal potential.
Alaska is full of opportunities for the hydrokinetic industry, and Cook Inlet is one of the greatest tidal energy resources on the planet.
Finding hope in a shared resource that has the possibility of delivering a nearly constant supply of clean, reliable, and renewable power across Alaska.
The potential is huge.
While Cook Inlet boasts some of the highest tidal ranges in North America,
The faster the water, the more energy you're going to be able to produce.
it's the velocity created that has companies like Ocean Renewable Power Company, or ORPC, based in Portland, Maine, so excited about trying to harness the power of Alaska's waters.
We started working on not only bringing tidal energy to Alaska, but also the idea of adapting our tidal energy system to a smaller system that would work in rivers and coastal communities in Alaska that have smaller energy loads.
Just this past summer, ORPC launched the nation's first commercial tidal energy project in Cobscook Bay near Eastport, Maine. The TideGen is a submarine system that looks more like a push lawnmower. The machine stretches 45 feet from end to end, with 4 turbines that are a little more than 9 feet in diameter. It operates below the surface, capturing the power of the moving water through turbines, spinning the rotor of the generator, converting that energy into electricity. This tidal project is expected to produce enough electricity to power more than 1,000 homes and businesses in Maine.
We'll see something similar, I'm sure, in Alaska.
Starting this summer, ORPC's Cook Inlet project will begin testing its smaller 2-turbine RivGen power system at their test site just offshore of East Foreland, near Nikiski.
This virtual river test site allows us to go out there testing currents. If something goes awry, we can wait till currents stop, deal with that problem, prepare for the next current event, and then test again.
In 2014, ORPC plans to deploy the RivGen system in the Kwidzak River, near the village of Igiugig, for several months, generating energy for the 50 people who call Igiugig home. While the tidal project in Maine has been successful so far,
We could have a really significant impact on our future energy with tidal energy.
producing any kind of energy in Alaska brings a different set of challenges, including harsh conditions, floating ice, high suspended sediment in the water, migrating beluga whales, and of course, salmon.
We think it's all doable. We think we can develop the technology to be able to work in this environment and be successful.
But for now, tidal energy remains untested.
We're not going to solve all of our problems in the immediate future.
But with 1.6 billion people on the planet, all of them wanting power yesterday, tidal energy remains a strong alternative in the energy crisis. For One Alaska, Blake Essig, Channel 2 News.
And as we mentioned, for years, companies have harvested energy underground, but with recent advancements in technology, they are now looking up, above ground. Channel 2's Garrett Turner found how some Alaska companies are turning to wind power.
You can't really see the wind, though you can see its effects. The effects of wind are countless, but here in Alaska, the applications have mostly been seen in nature, until now.
Worldwide, this is happening. I mean, all over Europe, Japan, China, countries all around the world are realizing that this is really the next industrial revolution.
That so-called revolution revolves around renewable energy sources, and wind power is one of them. Electrical wind power is generated by massive structures called wind turbines. The turbine blades face into the wind and are connected to a rotor shaft. As the blades turn, a series of gears within the shaft rotate, producing electricity within the turbine's generator. The generator is then connected to a system that disperses the electricity. Supporters tout 4 main advantages to wind power.
The first real benefit is they're stably priced. Once you put in a wind farm or a geothermal plant or a hydro project, you don't ever have to worry about the fuel prices spiking on you in the future. It's local energy, so we're not exporting dollars to import fuel. The third thing is they're clean. And not only is that an environmental benefit, but as we look into the future and we see the probable regulation of carbon, it means it's going to be cheaper. These resources will be around centuries from now, meaning the investments that we make in them today are going to have real benefits for a long, long time.
2 recently developed wind projects in Alaska provide power to the grid from Anchorage to Fairbanks. the Cook Inlet Region Incorporated, or CIRI, and the Golden Valley Energy Association. Golden Valley's wind farm lies just north of Healy and Eva Creek, high in the mountains. CIRI's wind farm is on Fire Island, just off the coast from Anchorage.
You have a very good understanding of long-term pricing for your power, and you can enter into very long-term contracts for that power. So in our case, the Fire Island Wind Project has a 25-year power purchase agreement. The price of that power is fixed from day one.
While popularity of wind power is growing in Alaska, it also has its drawbacks. For one, wind isn't a constant.
If the wind blew 100% of the time, we'd get 24 megawatts around the clock. But since the wind's intermittent, I think that we've estimate like 8 megawatts average year-round.
That means electric companies must compensate for that instability.
Utility has to be able to fill those gaps. When wind dies down and the wind project produces less, you have to be able to compensate for that because customers have a flat demand.
Chugach Electric knows a lot about consumer demand and believes the key to a successful wind project is planning its scope using realistic expectations.
Chugach is in favor of renewable energy that makes economic sense for customers. And so we came to agreement on a Fire Island project that works. It goes along with our hydro resources to help reduce the amount of natural gas we need to burn to meet customers' needs.
And needs can change along with urban development and shifts in population.
Well, I think over time you will see more commercial scale, utility scale wind projects in the rail belt. Where they are, how big they are, that remains to be seen.
In Eva Creek, the wind farm exceeded predicted expectations during the first 2 months of operation. At Fire Island, the turbines have produced 18,000 megawatt hours in the 4 months since November, enough to power 4,000 homes. Numbers like these make the wind more visible.
Garrett Turner reporting for us. Now, throughout our program, we've talked mostly about what the government, power utilities, and energy companies are doing about trying to provide more energy to Alaska. But there are quite a few individual Alaskans who have taken matters into their own hands. One of the first steps they've taken is to get a home energy audit through the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. Jimmy Ord is part of the AHFC Energy Audit Program. We want to thank you very much for being here.
Pleasure to be here.
The program's been around for a while and it's become very popular, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We have about 18,000 participants who've received a rebate under the Home Energy Rebate Program, and they've saved